my name's Claire, as you probably know from my previous videos. Today, I just want to touch on signs, alarm bells, whatever you want to call it. And if I'm totally honest, I'm not a professional and I can't actually tell you what the signs and alarm bells are of your daughter or son going off the rails. I just know that things got sticky. He was excluded from school. Certain things went missing from the house, like a sound box, a speaker. Oh yeah, my friends had it. What do you mean your friends had it? It was 40 quid. I want it back. Little things, games, PlayStation games were getting swapped, or so he said, but then I never saw the replacements. And looking back at that now, I can see that was a sign, but at the time it was just, oh, kids are swapping. So yeah, it went from speakers and PlayStation games to bikes. Carrera bikes is a massive thing with teenage boys at the moment. Those bikes are worth hundreds of pounds and they're out on them all the time. So my son had one which we'd scrimped and scraped for me, grandparents, etc. And he was out on these bikes. Now, I don't know what they're called. Is it a bike trail, bike gang, whatever? But my son went through the issue and the trauma and the stages of going down a dual carriageway with about 60 or 70 other lads on bikes to the opposite way of traffic. I'm not sure what the actual term of it is. It goes on every day and it still happens now. And that was my first inclination because the police were involved with that. It's a very, very big thing. I think it's called bike trailing or something like that. Anyway, so that was his first start of sort of being not a gang member, but to me that's a gang because there's 50 or 60 of them. They all meet up. They go down motorways, dual carriages, and they'll go to the opposite way of the traffic. They'll stall traffic, they'll stop traffic, and it's very, very dangerous. And I'm very blessed to say that actually I was in the car with my son the other week and he went, those kids, I want to just strangle them. I can't believe I did it, which is good because now he has the recognition of it. But going back to the bikes, so bikes were then coming in and out the house, different bikes that weren't his bike, somebody else's bike. I've borrowed it, of this, of that. Okay, fine, but where's your original bike? Never got to the bottom of it. So when I look back at it, I wonder if they were transactions for other things, i.e. drugs, or I owe him, he owes me, that kind of thing. So things did go missing and things like that. Never in my wildest dreams at 13 would I ever think that my son was smoking drugs, weed, whatever you want to call it, drinking or having sexual orientations with girls. Never, it never even crossed my mind, to be honest, at 13. But one day I came home and there was some grass green type items, if we say, dust on my kitchen bench, a Rizzler here and there. Started to put two and two together. And I know some of you are sitting there who's watching this and haven't been through it and it's like, oh, it's a bit of weed. Well, no, it's not, because the stench in my house was horrific. Weed nowadays is not weed as we know it, me certainly as an older lady. It's not the natural produce that you would think, where everybody, I'd say majority of people, even the nicest, most godliest people, have probably had a pull on the spliff in their day somewhere just as a little experiment. I know I have. I know when I go to Amsterdam I do, because it's great for my arthritis, but it's a weed that I know is coming through the right process. These kids are smoking weed, cannabis, marijuana, ammo, wedding cake, bubble gum, purple haze. All of this stuff are keywords that you need to be looking out for. I was hearing the word ammo and wedding cake flipping around and I just didn't think, I didn't even question it. Skittles. Skittles is a sweet. Oh no, it's not. It's a really potent form of marijuana that is laced with God knows what. Now, I'm not going to go down that line because I'm not actually a theorist in it. I'm not a scientist, but I do know that this stuff that they're smoking nowadays is potent. And I also do know that they're not mixing it with tobacco like perhaps they did back in the day. They are smoking it neat to almost to their comatose state afterwards. So I started to smell it in my house, and that's when the questions start rolling. And then I managed to get hold of his phone, and I was horrified to see that he was in his school uniform, smoking a spliff along with lots of other children. So it's going on in the school, in the playgrounds, in the toilets, it's everywhere. So we are kind of blinkered or blinded or whatever, or don't know the signs to look out for. And I honestly can say to you, I don't know the signs to look out for because I didn't see the signs. It was almost kind of too late when the police officers are ringing and CID because your son or daughter has been spotted on camera with somebody they perhaps shouldn't be with. So if your child is 13, 14, but is knocking around with somebody in their 30s, I'd have to seriously question that. And I would have, had I have known, but I didn't. And it was all too late for us. So, yeah, it's just to kind of say, be aware. Don't try and be Inspector Clouseau. Don't try and be a detective. It will just fall to you. It may be too little, too late. But if the signs are there, if you can smell something strange in the house, in the garden, I've only got a small courtyard garden, but I can see little stubs that have been put out, smoking or marijuana, whatever. You'll start to see it. How you deal with that, I don't know. I don't know how you deal with it, because if they're going to do it, they're going to do it. However, maybe trying to get support at an early stage may have been a really good key for me. You know, somebody like Anton from gym, if I had had his phone number in my phone and said, "Hi Anton, I've got a bit of an issue here. I found weed in the house, or I can smell it in the house. He's 13. I don't know what to do." Maybe then the intervention might have started at an earlier stage, and we may not have got into the pickle we did. Which brings me on to grooming. And people automatically think grooming is of a sexual nature, and it's so not. A boy or a young man could be groomed. My son is extremely tall and has never looked his age, and really is a young man. And I say to him all the time, "You were groomed," and he's like, "I wasn't groomed. I did it of my own accord." Well, no, you didn't, because somebody's approached you who's an adult and is asking you or saying to you in a roundabout way that this needs to be sold, you'll get this from it, that from it, blah, blah, blah. And I think my key point, and as trivial as it sounds, my tipping point was my son walked in with a new tracksuit on. Now, I always buy his tracksuits and trainers. He chooses them, but I buy them. And I was like, where's that come from? And I never, ever got to the bottom of it, but it was brand spanking new, full Nike hooded tracksuit, 100 quid or more, because it's an adult size. And that to me was my tipping point, that something really is going on here that really shouldn't be. He's not coming in with wads of cash, but he's coming in with little things like a new phone or a new speaker or whatever the case may be. But it was never like wads of cash, which people think, oh, drug dealers, they've got piles and piles of cash. No, with the kids, they're doing it differently. So with girls, I don't know, I don't have a girl, but she may be having new makeup. Makeup's expensive. She might have a new fragrance. She might have a new little handbag or a little Primark outfit, which has cost 60, 70 quid. But you know, as mum or dad, you haven't paid for it. So where have they got it from? They will say, oh yeah, I swapped it with so and so, and I swapped it because that's what my son was doing. But actually, I think it was paying weed debts or paying off things. I can't confirm that. I'll never confirm it. And he's going to see this video and say, "Mum, what are you talking about?" Because they are in denial, because they've been groomed to be that way. And I think we have to be really, really switched onto it that they are. And I can only thank God that I had a son. Not that boys are less vulnerable than girls, but I know my son can kind of look after himself to a certain extent, but girls are even more vulnerable. And I hate to be really crass, but girls have vaginas and girls can have babies, and girls are used for sex on a daily basis. And to me, that is just, I can't imagine anything worse than to think that my 13-year-old daughter was having to go through that. I'm sure my son's seen some stuff and he probably will hold it to his heart for the rest of his life. But I'm sure at 13, 14, 15, if he was moving around with these kind of unsavory adults, he must have seen girls of his age doing stuff that perhaps they shouldn't have been doing. And he knew that. So, yeah, like I said, I don't claim to be an expert and I don't claim to say these are definitely the signs, but I would really I can't express to you enough that if you smell something different in your house, you start to see different things coming in your house. And friends, that's another thing. I craved for my son to have one best friend, just one. He moved from group to group every few weeks. And I found that really odd. He's got a couple of friends that he's still friends with. But when I think about it now, I think it was vendettas or owing of money for weed, etc. And they move. I'm not just saying it was him, but they all move around different friend groups all the time. Now, me growing up as a girly girl, I had my best friend. It was how it was back then. And I know I sound really old when I say that. But if your daughter's coming in and she's with different friends every week, different age groups, I'd question it or look into it further. I always used to try and find out my son's friends' parents as he was younger. But as they get older, it becomes more difficult because he's not the odd one out. The kids he's hanging around with are doing the same activities, they're doing the same thing as he's doing, so they're very protective about where they live, who their parents are. They don't want the involvement. So yeah, I think it's just kind of, don't be stuck in your ways, try and be a little bit streetwise, as modern as that sounds, but you've got to get down with the kids. There is no two ways about it. You have to get down with the kids. Snapchat, all these other things that are going on, I know for a fact my son will take a picture of a copper and he will put it on his Snapchat to say, this person, this policeman is out and about. I'll be like, why are you doing that? But he's not the only person that's doing it. If there's an accident, if something's gone off, someone's been arrested or traumatized, people are recording it and putting it on Snapchat. Now, I didn't grow up with Snapchat. I didn't even grow up with a mobile phone, as many of us didn't. But this is their life and we have to kind of respect that. This is how they live. You know, we used to get 10 pence and go to the phone box and probably get 20 minutes talking to my friend or a boyfriend that I shouldn't really have and all the rest of it. Nowadays, it's on tap. Their life is so different to how our life is. And we kind of have to respect that. It's hard to respect some aspects of it, but we have to kind of respect and accept that this is how they live nowadays. This is what their life is about. I'm not saying it is acceptable in some cases, but we also have to be able to challenge. And challenging was something I had drummed into me from an early age and with my career. So if I think something's not right, I'll challenge it. It's very uncomfortable. People hate it, but challenge it. Why is that like that? Why have you done that? If another parent speaks to you, I've had so many parent conversations with other parents, and it's so difficult because you don't want to put blame on just one child. You don't want the blame to be on your child. But I was always very open and very sort of open-minded. And my mum always taught me, if two little kids have a fight in a playground and the teacher says, blah, 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 you have to take a back seat because you wasn't there to witness it. And I stand by that. Unless you're there to witness what actually happened, you can't really say yes he did it or no he didn't. So funny enough, that kind of brings me on to the local community officer who knows my family, and knows me growing up. I actually bumped into him yesterday. And he was like, "How's the boy?" I was like, "I'm so proud. He's doing really well. He's working, he's saving money, he's in construction, he's got his certifications." And he was like, "Wow." And he said, "I never doubted it, never doubted it. He was just going through that horrible stage, getting involved with the wrong people, and he's pulled through." But he was also saying to me that, you know, it's really hard to recognize and really hard to be on the fence. And he said, "One thing I can say about you, Claire, is whenever you got that phone call, you'd be like, okay, let's hear what you got to say. Let's hear the story." He said, "Never once have I heard you say, 'My son would never do that.'" I said, "Because I could never say that. I had to be honest with myself and say, he could have done that. He may well have done that, but I have to hear the story and ask him and find out." And lying is a massive thing, which brings me on to another thing, another sign to look out for. Fibs, as we were taught as kids, but lies. So the lies, you know, "Where have you been? What have you been doing?" "Oh, nothing." "What, so you spent the whole day doing nothing?" You know, there's lots and lots of little things. It's a whole nother video, but I mean, my son stole money from me when it got really bad. Really bad. He took my credit card, my debit card, and drew money out. And it was just appalling to think that my son, who had been brought up in such a good way, had actually stooped that low. So actually, as much as I was annoyed about him taking the money, I had to look at it from another point of view and think, hang on a minute, he's done that for a reason. He's in this so deep that he's had to take money from me to pay somebody else. So I guess what I'm trying to say to you guys is, as much as you're confused and everything else, you kind of have to take a step back and understand why. Why do they need £100? That's a lot of money by anybody's standards, you know. And if they're having to scrimp, scrape, steal, borrow, beg to get £100, I remember my son saying to me on that day, screaming in my face, "You don't understand. If I don't pay this, I'm dead." Do you know how that made me feel as a mum or as a human? That my son, my child, was having to find £100, which actually, I say it's a lot of money, but actually it's nothing. He was having to find £100, and at 14, he's telling me, if he doesn't have this £100, somebody's going to kill him. Just let that sink in for a minute. And as I'm talking about these memories are coming back to me. And I remember just thinking, what on earth is that bad that somebody would actually take your life for five £20 notes? The reason I have to pause for that is because these things are coming back to me. They are there, but they kind of are coming back to the surface. And I have to think to myself that day, if he didn't take that £100 and do what he did, flipped it or whatever, because I did get the money back the next day, I think, I have to think to myself, had he have not had access to my card, had he have had not, I hadn't had the cash in my account, what would have happened that day? Would it have been two police officers at my door? And two police officers often means that somebody's died. I'm actually shaking now because actually the trauma and the thought process of that is become more clearer as I'm talking about it now. At the time, it wasn't so clear. So yeah, it's just, yeah, it's quite frightening out there. And I think we just have to be blessed that our children come home every night and he does get into bed, or his dad's bed, whichever. And I went through endless days of, as soon as he got home and the door was shut and locked on the other side, I was like, yes, he's home. But actually, the realization is that a lot of kids don't make it home nowadays, or are somewhere that they perhaps shouldn't be, smoking drugs, having sex, or being abused having sex with older people, and putting themselves in such a dangerous situation. But they don't see it as danger like we do. They see it as a lifestyle. It's fun, it's this, it's that. But then I have to question, in his darkest moments, did he actually ever sit there and think, I don't like this? But because I've kind of shown people this is what we do, and other people have shown me this is what we do, everybody stuck together, which then makes me question the 30-year-old that was actually the ringleader who's supplying the drugs and making them do the drug running. Does he feel like that? Has he grown up like this? He must have. He hasn't just woke up one day in his 30s and thought, I'm going to deal drugs and get 13-year-olds to do it for me. So I guess what I'm trying to say is look for the signs, try and deal with the signs. You're not going to resolve them, but we have to look so much deeper into the mental health and the reasons behind it, because our children are only following suit from an adult. That adult is only following suit from another adult. And we have to break the cycle. I don't think I'm going to do it in my lifetime. I can't do it on my own anyway. I don't think any of us will ever break the cycle, because it's been going on for hundreds of years. Prostitution, drugs, all the rest of it has been going on for so long. But now it's everywhere. It's under your nose and you don't even know it's there. So yeah, just try and be aware and try and deal with it the best possible way you can to get the best possible outcome.